Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible and, frankly, terrifying cyber operations ever discovered, the SolarWinds attack. This was so much more than just a hack. It was a brilliant work of espionage that literally turned our own trust into the ultimate weapon. So let's start with this number, 18,000. What is that? Well, that's roughly how many organizations, we're talking top government agencies and massive corporations, willingly downloaded a ticking time bomb onto their networks. They thought they were just installing a routine software update, but what they were really doing was opening a backdoor for some of the most skilled hackers on the planet. So, how in the world did they pull this off? Well, to get how the heist worked, you first have to understand the target. See, the attackers didn't bother trying to break into thousands of different networks one by one. No, they were way smarter than that. They found a single, golden key that could unlock all the doors at once. And that key was the SolarWinds Orion platform. Just think of it like the central nervous system for a company's entire IT department. It has God-level access to monitor and manage literally everything on the network. So you can see why it was the perfect target, right? If you control Orion, you basically control the whole network. And the scale here is just massive. The Orion platform was being used by something like 33,000 organizations all over the world. So by poisoning this one piece of software at the source, the attackers gave themselves a potential way into any one of those high-value networks. Okay, so who was behind all this? We're not talking about your average cyber criminals here. The group that orchestrated this was incredibly disciplined, super patient, and almost completely invisible. They were like ghosts, just hiding inside the code. This little intelligence file here really paints a picture. We're looking at what's called an advanced persistent threat, or an APT, which is widely believed to be backed by a nation-state. Their skill level? Off the charts. And their whole MO is about being stealthy and patient. They were absolutely playing the long game. And you know, their motivation was totally different from what you might expect. This was not about causing chaos or deploying ransomware for a quick buck. Nope. This was 100% about long-term espionage. Get in, stay hidden, and just quietly siphon intelligence from the most sensitive networks in the world. And that brings us to the real heart of the heist. The absolute genius of this attack was how they took a symbol of security, a digitally signed software update from a company you trust, and turned it into their main weapon. It was a modern-day Trojan horse, for sure. Here's how they did it. First, they broke into SolarWinds' own systems. Then, very carefully, they injected their malicious code right into the Orion software. And this is the critical part. They did it inside the legitimate build process, so their bad code got compiled, signed, and packaged just like a real update, which made it practically impossible to spot. Now, this malicious code was given the name Sunburst, and its design was incredibly clever. Once it got installed through the update, it would just sit there, dormant, for up to 2 weeks to avoid any suspicion. Only then would it quietly phone home to the attacker's servers, opening up a secret channel for them to come in. This timeline just perfectly illustrates their patience. The bad updates started going out to customers around June 2020, but the whole thing wasn't even discovered until December. That means for over 6 months, these ghosts were moving around inside some of the most secure networks on Earth, totally undetected. When the discovery was finally made, it sent absolute shockwaves through the entire cybersecurity community. You know, it wasn't like a loud alarm bell suddenly went off. It was more like this quiet, slow unraveling that revealed the jaw-dropping scale of a silent global breach. Okay, now this part is so important. Even though 18,000 organizations got that Trojan horse update, the attackers didn't go after all of them. Not even close. They were surgically precise. Once they had that initial foothold, they handpicked only the most high-value targets, only about 100 or so, to move on to the next phase. And this phrase just nails their strategy. The attack was a mile wide, but the exploitation was an inch deep. They cast a massive net to make sure they caught the specific fish they were after, but the actual deep dive intrusion was incredibly focused. This was never about chaos. It was all about precision. And just look at who those targets were. We're talking key U.S. government agencies, huge tech companies, and even other cybersecurity firms. They were strategically going after the organizations that hold the most sensitive information and control our most critical infrastructure. Yeah, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, did not pull any punches. They flat out called it a grave risk, basically confirming that this attack shook the very foundations of trust that our entire digital world is built on.
So, the fallout from SolarWinds really forced a painful but very necessary wake up call for the security world. This wasn't just about patching a piece of software, it was about completely rethinking our entire philosophy of digital trust.
And a huge part of that response has been the push for something called zero trust architecture. See, the old model was like a castle with a big wall. We called it trust but verify. But SolarWinds proved that once an attacker gets past that wall, they can do whatever they want. Zero trust flips that on its head. It assumes attackers are already inside. The new motto is never trust, always verify, which means everyone and everything has to prove who they are every single time they try to access something. And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? When the very tools designed to keep us safe can be turned into weapons against us, how are we supposed to defend ourselves?
Well, this is basically the new blueprint that came out of the whole mess. On top of zero trust, it's about getting way more serious about checking the security of your software suppliers, watching network traffic that's leaving your network like a hawk, and limiting how much your own internal systems blindly trust each other. The days of assuming something is safe just because it's inside are completely over. And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. The SolarWinds heist did way more than just steal some data. It completely shattered our core assumptions about security. It proved that in the world we live in now, trust isn't always a shield. Sometimes it can be the biggest vulnerability of all.